The whole world is sick.
Are you worried about America? I am.
Believe the impossible and you can do the incredible.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Patriot. And I have a guest on today that I have been wanting to have for a long time. And our schedules have just clashed and clashed. She's had weddings to prepare. And she's just a busy woman. And you'll see what she's up to just when I get a chance to introduce all that she's been doing since we've known her. But I want to welcome to our show today from the great state of Ohio, Melody Lyons. So welcome, Melody, to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's so great to be here.
As I was saying, it's often a challenge to coordinate schedules to put aside like an hour of time or sometimes more to do a podcast, to do your best to prepare for it. And you're a very busy woman. And I'm going to let you talk a lot about what you're up to, but I want to introduce just from what you have that I've seen, I think it was on your website. And it really not only summarizes what the kind of person you are, it just blows my mind that you're able to do all of these things. And it says, I'm a happy wife of 25 years, a mother to 8, a doula, an author, two books we're going to highlight here, a chronic illness survivor and thriver, a speaker, natural health coach, certified aromatherapist, fitness professional, business owner, home educator, dreamer, and Jesus lover. I was like, whoa, okay. And so, then your next line is, there's nothing really missing. I can't imagine anything missing after that list. But, I've wanted to have you on for a long time because we've been blessed to know you and your family for, I don't know, maybe 8-10 years or so.
Yeah.
You and my wife Chantal have done some projects together. You're both entrepreneurs, and you both have similar passions. And you have a passion for natural health and the importance of that and the integrity of the body and human freedom in general. And I was thinking, I don't know of many people who can articulate that so well. But before we even jump into that, I'd like people to know a little bit about your story, because I mentioned, you're a chronic illness survivor and thriver. You're an author. You're a doula. How would you summarize, kind of the journey that God has brought you to today? With now your passion of really being this. You've got a lot of grit. You want to share this message of the importance of claiming your health freedom, but tying this into, like I said before, the integral picture of the human person, the Catholic life. So give us a little bit of that story.
Sure. Well, first I want to clarify though, like when you read that list of things that I that I claim, I don't do all of those things all at once. I'm a slow liver by necessity. I have to slow things down and sort of adopt what I call a godly pace of living, like really careful discernment about how I use my time and how I use, even my talents. So it sounds really impressive and it sounds fast and it sounds like I'm doing a lot, but one thing at a time. And all of those things are pieces of, of who I am, I guess, but not all at once. So just wanted to clarify that. But my writing and public projects that I pursued are really essentially a response to my need to heal after years of chronic disability. And overarching all of that is that it's just a work of gratitude to God for all that he has provided for me. And I realize that these healings in my own life are not just for me, but they're also public and relational because they're my testimony, they're testimony to God's goodness and design. That is how the gospel has just illuminated my life and worked in my life towards healing. And I have that obligation to share. So it also increases my own healing by keeping me, outwardly focused and learning. And as you know, ministry to others becomes an extension of our own work and sanctifies for us what otherwise could so easily become just this self-focused and insular pursuit. So my story is, as I said, that I just was in a state of chronic disability. 10 years ago, I began a journey of natural healing, radically changing my diet and my lifestyle because I had hit rock bottom. I was out of options. About 5 years ago, I was finally diagnosed with lupus and Lyme disease after many years of debilitating pain and disability and weakness. I had always been, prior to that, fit and athletic. I had 9 pregnancies and 8 living children. Through those years, it just became increasingly difficult. I was so used to having ease of movement, of having that freedom, but it just became increasingly difficult to fight my way back into exercise, first of all, and then into normal activities. I was injuring joints just walking around the house. And at one point I was only able to eat like this mushy cereal. I think it was Special K with berries, if I recall correctly. But I was eating that like 3 times a day because it's the only thing that my stomach would tolerate. And I told my husband at that time that I thought that I was battling degenerative disease, and I turned out to be correct. So it was just this long series of losses, lots of doctor's appointments. I was told I would never run again. I stopped playing sports. I was not even able to like run across the yard with my kids. I thought I was going to be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40, and I just got sicker. So my diagnosis eventually included several autoimmune diseases, which manifested a lot like MS, a lot of MS symptoms. And then part of my disease makes it difficult for my body to process medications and handle toxins. So that's when I really committed to a natural path. Because what would you do? What do you do if you can't take any medications, And that question was the beginning of a lot of healing for me because I had to find a different way. Nutrition, plant-based medicine, stress management, a new approach to movement, to prayer. And then the way that all of that discovery and that journey illuminated my faith journey, God's design, his plan for me, his goodness, his magnanimity, and his design for all of us, for all people.
That's pretty powerful. And when you're talking about how this has impacted your whole life, this is something that I try to ingrain in what we do at the Fulton Sheen Institute, and a sub area of it. I call it the Health Freedom Project. Is because it's something that Catholics don't really talk about much at all, or they see it in a negative light. It's one thing to say like, oh, you're battling, through something and you're looking for your options. But when I talk to Catholics, it's sort of like you're speaking a whole different language, you're representing a different world, and it's often kind of a suspicious thing. Like, I'm taking these matters into my own hands. I'm not going to listen to all these lies that are being fed to us. Well, what do you mean you're being lied to? What are you talking about? And you don't even know where to start, and just in that light too. Before I forget, in light of your journey, right now you've centralized much of what you do with your website, which is primarily, it seems like it's like a blog focus website called The Essential Mother. I'm going to put just a screenshot right there so people can see. And so it's theessentialmother.com. And you can see she's got her blog feed right there. And, it's inspiring that you've taken your experiences and you've really taken, I'd say massive action in helping to wake up Catholics to the things that are important. One of the things that I've had in the past and focusing with others is a phrase that Sister Lucia of Fatima had said. And she described how the world, especially the time right now that we're living in, is living in a diabolical disorientation. And who's out there to help us to really give a Catholic reorientation to the things that matter? And we're going literally back to the roots of things when we're talking about our health, and just kind of, leaving a matrix where people are kind of brainwashed when it comes to how they view things in the world and politics. And, like we're kind of waking up slowly, and maybe in some cases a little faster, that things just are not what they've appeared to be for so long. And for many, they can't handle that. So, they meet somebody like you who's had this experience in your health, and how it's challenged you in every single way, and how you've taken that responsibility and ownership of that. And, you've really, I think some of the stories are kind of miraculous, because we've known you for, that's about 8 to 10 years. And we've had, especially my wife Chantal, has had a chance to experience some really strong challenges, and to see how you work through them with your husband, with your family, I think is inspiring, and it's also empowering, because now you're sharing that with others. So, in these lists of things that we were talking about, you're a speaker and you're a doula. Real quick, explain to people who don't know what that is.
Well, a doula is a non-medical person who accompanies a pregnant and laboring woman through birth. I mean, that's essentially it. So it's very much at the heart of the feminine nature. I think this is something that women used to just accompany each other
Right.
through, and now you need certifications and whatever to be called a doula. But really, it's an accompaniment.
Okay. And of all of these things that you've been engaged in, which one of these was probably your first one, outside of being a home educator? You homeschool.
Yeah.
But you have a fitness professional, business owner, natural health coach, and of course being an author. What was your path in that?
What was first? I guess my first love has always been, not my first love, but even going into pre-conversion and everything was always fitness. Just overall energetic approach to well-being. And actually that was a direction that I was thinking of going professionally if I wasn't married, and then God turned my whole world upside down, and look how beautiful it turned out. So and then and everything kind of, of course you have life experiences, and then it's so exciting. I started having babies, and of course birth became this beautiful thing that just fit in with what I already loved, with understanding of the body, and actually is like this athletic event of sorts. And then as I experienced health issues, the nutrition came in to play, and environment. And it's like Pat Flynn. I don't know if you know Pat Flynn of what is Chronicles of Strength, but he talks about skill stacking. And I love that, because instead of getting like one major, I'm an expert on this one mega thing, that's very narrow. He talks about stacking skills through life, and emphasizing at different points, but really being able to build out. So I try to look at my eclectic experience as skill stacking. Sometimes it's just like I'm really easily distracted, but maybe it's just skill stacking.
So, what inspired you to launch your website, and why is it called The Essential Mother?
Well, The Essential Mother is really it's been it's so funny. It's been a long time since I've visited that term, but it has multiple applications. And I think that essential mother is just really that unique beauty and purpose of each woman. So I have been accused of, this arrogance, like, oh, you're calling yourself the essential mother. No, I mean, that's what it sounds like. But we're all women have that essential gift of nourishing and nurturing the world. And that was one of the motivations that I had behind the website, of being able to equip and to heal and to rise from wherever we are, and to restore that healing community. The Essential Mother is also a nod to Blessed Mother, of course. and we need her so desperately. And I want to keep her present, in front of me at all times. And then also my interest in essential oils. I can't neglect that, because that's definitely a part of it. And it just made sense. That word essential, I tossed it around in my mind so many times, and it just had so many beautiful applications. And so, of course, plant-based medicine and the natural world fits in there so beautifully as well.
Well, I think that's a good springboard too for what I wanted to get into, because you've authored two works, and one I'd like you to spend a little bit of time helping us to know what they're about a little bit more. I mean, your titles I think are in and of themselves really appealing. The first one I wanted to highlight is one, maybe this is your most recent, is the Sunshine Principle. I'm just going to put a little picture of it right there. It's going to cover half my face. I'm going to cover. Let's see if I go to the actual screen here. That's big enough. Hopefully everyone can see that there. The Sunshine Principle, a radically simple guide to natural Catholic healing. What an awesome title and subtitle. And, I have some of my notes here. I just took a couple of screenshots of things too. And it's what inspired you to do this book? And how can then, and of course, I want people to get it in their home, but I like that, a radically simple guide to natural Catholic healing. What does that even mean?
A natural Catholic guide, a radical Catholic guide to natural Catholic healing. Oh, when you say that, like my mind explodes with the entire content and all of the history of my life, and it's one of those things where like I know the summaries so well, but there's just this explosive response in me, and that's what inspired the book was gratitude. I think that's the simplest way to say it. All the details come bubbling up in me, but what inspired it was gratitude. Just thanksgiving to God for the healing that he has brought to me in my life, body, mind, and soul. And then, that extension, like this is my testimony. So it really is my testimony to his healing power. And the principle, which I call the Sunshine Principle, is that God has arranged everything in the universe in consideration of everything else. And that the greatest potential for healing occurs when we align our behaviors with God's natural, biological, and spiritual laws. And just that truth is so obvious in every aspect of life and of faith that it stands like the sun, which is unfailing, necessary, and powerful, but so often taken for granted. So that's the core of it.
I like how you put it. There's it's on the website. If you go to the Essential Mother, I think it's right. There's a link to it, and I'll put all these links on the screen for everyone to see. But it says, where is it? It says, it is commonly said in the wellness world that if a flower is dying, you don't fix the flower, you fix the environment in which it grows. And then you go on and say, perhaps that's the answer to why we all feel sick and half crazy. Perhaps we've gotten the question itself absolutely wrong. For example, you say, we ask who pays for healthcare, when we should be asking, what is healthcare and how do I fix this runaway train? I love this, like, it's a radical simplicity, like you're saying. But when you're reading this, it's like something so simple does just make us pause. Yeah, I've never even thought of approaching things this way. Somebody gets cancer, and I know a lot of people, and right now that's exploding like crazy. That's a whole other subject, I think, in and of itself. But the first reaction is I need to go to my oncologist, and I need to, start on they'll call it a traditional plan, but it's just a pharmaceutical plan, and it's the chemo or radiation. And I'm not going to judge people or things, but when does it ever come up of, I want to beat this thing. Can I even beat this thing with what God has given me? Who's even saying that that's possible? And yet I know people who have made that radical choice and just through nutrition reversed an entire process of a very serious cancer that was that had metastasized throughout the entire body and was terminal. I mean, as they were told. This one case I was thinking was in Peoria, Illinois, and so it just makes you wonder, like, what God has designed and created for the world don't you think that he's probably thought of these kinds of things? And then why is there, such a movement to suppress these things at the same time? So what you're doing is really kind of revolutionary for people, as well as I think it's a tremendous work of mercy, because people don't know. And as we know today, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance today is really death to not just only the soul, as we see many people leaving the church, and just the confusion that's
so
going
much
on
more
everywhere.
that God could give us,
but
He's
death to the
only
body.
waiting for us to acknowledge His will.
That's
in order to give them.
One of the things, as I was looking at your emphasis on this, is like, and I mentioned this in other podcasts, one of the big ways that the devil is attacking us, and really, perhaps the primary way, is through our bodies, because we just don't give it much thought. And yet, it's like the anti-incarnation. The incarnation, through the body of Christ, we receive redemption and all that is good from God and His grace, and He restores the image of God. And Satan is the anti-image, and he wants to brand humanity in his own way. And people will say, that's ridiculous. No, that's just common sense. If there's a Christ and there's an Antichrist and there's a spirit of Antichrist, and it's like, well, what would it be? It's just a counterfeit of everything. So you have to know the original, so that you could also then be able to immediately spot when something's diabolical. But today, it's like the vision of St. Faustina of just masses of people blissfully singing as they're like ready to walk off a cliff. And it's sometimes you want to laugh at the kind of the idiocracy that we found ourselves surrounded in, but it's sad because we now know we know these people, and many, like they're for all intents and purposes, they're good, they're faithful people, and yet unknowingly they're making tragic choices. And it's almost like, where do you start? I know this is something in your sphere and on your radar all the time, because you feel that same responsibility to help wake people up, but not just to wake them up, but to give them solutions.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to comment, and because this is something I know right now you're heavily active in on your the Essential Mother website, on blog posts, which is why I'm like, people, please bookmark it and read what she's done. She's got great commentary and insights, and she doesn't mince her words. So I'd love for you to comment on how that's entered into your world more.
Yeah, I everything that you said is is really resonating. Just that image of God being assaulted at every turn, and now we see the most recent attacks on our children. With their very identity, and it like this assault of imposing this self-loathing upon them, where they don't even want to be who they are, where they want to cut their bodies and chemically castrate, if I'm going to be um, plain speaking about it. It is totally diabolical, and we see that we've been able to get to this point at all because it's been chipped away. It's been chipped away in the medical system, even in our church communities, where we have failed to understand the dignity of ourselves, of our bodies, and also that of others. If we look at ourselves and we just have this this notion that we're just uh, that that we're, oh, what's a good word? I don't know. I guess self-loathing keeps coming to mind. Like, we have this disregard for our bodies that says, you know what? I'm just going to feed myself garbage. I'm going to allow my body to just fall into disrepair. I'm going to lose all of my strength. I'm going to give myself over to the technology of the world. I'm going to give my mind over. I'm going to neglect prayer. All of these things are acts of self-hatred. They're abusive to ourselves. And then that, as by extension, and also, that's pornographic culture. We lose the ability to see the dignity in other people. And that relates to, I've been very vocal about medical freedom. That's closely related to my story and to my heart, because I'm a living testimony to the fact that when options are taken away, we always lose. When we're not treated with dignity, when we're not seen, when we walk into a doctor's office and somebody, looks at us as a number, as a problem, and then gives us a pharmaceutical option as the only option, we lose. The medical system has its benefits, but it didn't help me, was not able to help me through the pharmaceutical path because it was not taking the time to say, how is your body designed? What's going wrong? And how can we get the body back on track and take care of it? Really, really caring for people. And that's one thing that we're not doing. And as you're saying, this diabolical disorientation, we've forgotten how to take care of people, and that's where like all of these little things that I love to do, even the doula, we need to be caring for people on a very intimate level, and with even with nutrition and plant-based medicine on a cellular level, on all levels. So, there have been times when my body hasn't even been able to handle a Tylenol, let alone an experimental injection of who knows what from the highly corrupted pharmaceutical industry. I consider that to be this incredible blessing, because my body is like a barometer. It says you're in the presence of something really toxic. For whatever reason, like my body just cannot navigate that as well as other people. And so the red flags come immediately, and then I have to shift. But other people, maybe don't have those red flags as clearly, and we have to be present for them. We have to be this voice. And as humans, we share characteristics. We're designed to be fed and cared for physically in a generally consistent way. And we're also biologically unique with different weaknesses, strengths, and environments. And a medical approach, a societal approach, which fails to honor these needs is not in the service of God or man and should be opposed. And we find this is becoming really a moral issue on every single front, because that image of God is under such assault, basically in every sphere now in our society. I'm not sure if I answered your question or followed your. I kind of went on a tangent there, so let me know if I did.
Well, no, I mean, you're touching on an important point here, and we don't talk about it enough as Catholics. It is talked about if you are even in this sphere, it's not talked about it in this way, or in this angle of it. People who are involved in the theology of the body, because it's all about restoring the image of God that's been twisted, and we need to untwist it, what Satan has done and what sin has done, and restore that image of God stamped in our bodies, in our human sexuality. But we don't talk about, and my wife Chantal uses this phrase, the theology of the health of our body. I mean, health has the etymology of the word health is one that speaks of wholeness, and we. I remember Christopher West. He talks about this all the time. Like we're kind of battling within the church even today. Still, this whole thing of, well, who really cares about the body? It's the soul that matters. Well, but we're
Heresy.
but we're not exactly. It's a heresy, and it's like. And well, then why did the word become flesh? Why didn't God just snap his fingers and choose some other way, or write some other book and say, well, all these other books, and here's like the book at the end that you need to worry about, and there's your formula. It's how do you respond to people? This must happen. I would think quite frequently. People say, Melody, that's great. I'm so almost like, I don't want to say a false sympathy, but like, I'm so glad you're working through your journey and your health, and but like, why emphasize it so much? I mean, because again, we're called to suffer anyway, and it's in the end we just die to our bodies and ourselves, and like, why don't we talk about more other things and positive and or things in their spiritual life, and like, how do you respond to that?
Well, it's touchy because it's a little bit tricky, because I think the answer that we don't want to look at a lot of times is that it is actually a fault of ours, that we want to do as we prefer, even with our obligations and in the spiritual life. We actually have an obligation to care for our bodies, but sometimes we prefer to go sit and over spiritualize it and really neglect the work that we ought to be doing. Work and pray, right? So somebody saying, well, I have this suffering, and God has allowed me to have it, or somebody might say God has given this to me. Let's say they have a suffering of their own creation, because they have maybe not treated their body with the dignity that it deserves, and their lifestyle has led to disease. And now they're on multiple medications and, have a disability and maybe side effects from those medications. Well, they're embracing the suffering and they're offering up the suffering. But if that's a cross of their own design, that's something that really needs to be discerned. Like, if you've put yourself there, what if God is calling you to be free of that particular cross so that you can take up another one in his service and spread the gospel message in another way? If you have hamstrung yourself, and I say this as a self indictment also, because I realize the ways in my life that I mistreated my own health. And I think that collectively this is a problem within the church and the world. So I'm not like, you're terrible, you're bad, but we do have to look at that. Well, okay, let's embrace every suffering that we have. But is this really where God wants us? Or for example, for me, does he want me laying on the couch, when I could be up and serving my children? Well, maybe it's something that I can't control, and then I have to work through that and offer it up and live a life of heroic virtue from my couch. But what if, by changing my diet, by changing the way that I handle life, my lifestyle, I can get up off of that couch and lead my children bodily? Even such things as cleaning my house, leading prayer, having the energy to get up and go to mass, or to feed hungry neighbors, or serve a pregnant member of the community, or somebody who has a new baby. I couldn't do those things when I was very ill. And I also had difficulty with prayer because I could not focus. I was just overwhelmed a lot of times with suffering. Not that I don't still have difficulty with prayer, but there are certain levels that are our responsibility. So I would just say, is it an excuse? Is it an excuse not to be doing a holy work and just a selfish desire to do the faith as we want to do it? So we don't want to give up the Oreos and Doritos, for example. And so we take that up as this spiritual cross and think ourselves holy somehow. Like, well, this is just my lot in life and I'm stuck with it. I don't know. Maybe there's another perspective.
Yeah, and in the times in which we live too, it's we are called to a new evangelization, and it's hard to do things when you're always sick and you're always tired. And we've been kind of raised in this world of just giving excuses for everything rather than taking full responsibility for our life. And whether people like it or not, even those who want to just emphasize as if we're basically just called to be angels, our ability to change the world, even spiritually, rests on our bodies. So you can go out and make disciples, or you can choose not to do it. And you can also, make yourself unfit to do that. Now, this you mentioned early on, just in your introduction, about fitness, and I like to interview people who are into that world, especially Catholics, who get the body, mind, spirit integrated vision, because we are all called to a fitness in all of those things. And when we're not only do we suffer, others suffer because we are relational by nature, and so our mental fitness has a big effect on the world. I mean, just look at how we are being assaulted today. It's if you understanding the principle of asymmetric warfare is you're doing this while you're coming in from here. You're like almost like a sleight of hand. You're distracting, and then boom, right from behind, the devil gets you. So he keeps you occupied in these other things while he's getting his ultimate goal done. And I think that's what we're seeing today. It's been over many, many, many decades. And there have been people who have admitted this, who were communist infiltrators, because that's kind of what they try to do. How do you destroy a culture? And it's by going after their morality, you go after their health, and then eventually you take the spirit, because they just collapse As you know, they don't go to the soul directly. They go through how do you break things down. So anyway, like you said, there's a moral responsibility that we have in this world of taking care of the fullness of our being. And I like how you put it in your the sunshine principle. I had read a little bit of it before, but it says, when body and mind are shattered, when fear casts a shadow over joy, when the answer can't be found in a pill and heaven seems silent, there's hope. The sunshine principle is a work that is both a song of the soul and a guide of gritty practicality, a natural approach to healing mind, body, and soul, and what it takes to rise. I don't know if you wrote, I'm sure you probably wrote that, but whoever wrote that, sometimes I ask my wife, like, how do I phrase this? That's perfectly phrased that every single person should be like, all of those things I want. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is people are tired of hearing of the problems. They do want to hear solutions. But sometimes you don't appreciate the solution unless you understand the problem. You know, I always use that analogy of a doctor. If I go and I have a headache all the time, and then, you know, what the actual diagnosis is going to determine what I probably do about it. If it's like, well, Peter, you're not drinking any water, and so you're dehydrated. Okay, well, just drink water. Great. Or we found a malignant tumor. All of a sudden, my life's going to radically change. You know, so it's like when we realize that, you know, right now there's an assault on all of these things. We have to be on the top of our game in body, mind, and spirit to be able to fight in this war. And that's why I've appreciated all that you've done. I want to remind people who are listening and watching is that one of the main reasons I also have Melody on is because she's done her research. I appreciate people and respect them a lot when they're saying something, they back it up. It's documented. They know where to go. They know where the sources are. It's easy to throw things out, and then people say, well, that's whatever. That's a conspiracy theory or something. They just want to disarm it versus, no, actually, here's the documents that say that. This is actually the head of so-and-so who says this. These are the things that matter. And these are the people that God puts in our lives and in the life of the church right now through technology and the internet that are worth giving our attention and our support. So that's another reason I wanted to have you on. Transitioning to your other work, this is something that really struck me, and especially because it was I think that's about 5 years now in publication. So pre-COVID and all this other stuff is, I'm going to put it on the screen here. Wrong one. Boom, there it is. The essential oils for preppers, taking your healthcare off the grid. And you've mentioned essential oils already, and people who are watching this are somewhat familiar with them because what we do in the Fulton Sheen Institute is we have a body, mind, spirit approach. And our Health Freedom Project, we've talked about that and why one of the things that I promote and have, especially with my wife Chantal, is essential oils. It's not totally foreign to them. But when I saw this work, I was like, wow, very few Catholics talk about prepping of any kind. It's more like, well, God will just take care of it. He will in the end, especially if you've done all you can. But if you're like, you know, if Noah just said, well, look at all these materials here. Oh my gosh, how am I supposed to follow all this? Like, God will work it out. No, he had to build the thing. So anyway, I'd love to hear what led you to write this in 2017, and it's more relevant now, way more relevant now than then. So, essential oils for preppers, taking your healthcare off the grid. Tell us about that, Melody.
Well, it was kind of a fun extension of what I had already been working on. I had at that point I had started the book, although I didn't publish until 2020. But at the heart of the book, which I don't. Excuse me, I don't get into too much. I had to choose, you know, the focus, the different areas of focus. But it really is, what do we do when we can no longer rely on a medical system to take care of our families? And I was living that, you know, kind of in this system finding doctor after doctor after doctor, nobody who would really care for me without a pharmaceutical option, that was also going to deteriorate my health. Also having experienced as a mother going through obstetrics where I was not valued, where we were put in dangerous situations, where my wishes were not honored, where the health of my baby was not honored, and where we were even offered a late-term abortion for a perfectly healthy baby. All of these circumstances, we run into this anti-life environment in the medical community. So that's kind of had me thinking, what do you do? What do you do if you don't have anywhere to go? As Christians, I do feel like we're getting squeezed out of that system a bit and trying to find, I've heard more than one Christian say, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable. I don't have a doctor. I don't have a pediatrician or somebody that I can trust, really trust." And alongside of that, is just, which I write about in the ebook, is just this idea that we should have some preparedness for our families. My husband is a great provider and protector, and so he's been interested in prepping. We're not crazy preppers, but we have a mindset of preparedness. So looking ahead and saying, well, what would we do if? I think we've all experienced, I don't know, we've experienced an extended power outage a couple years back. We have lost water when there's been a water main break. There have been shortages. Now there's this infant formula shortage. And, we have little experiences of those things. So how do we do that medically? What do we do if there's no antibiotics? And that's one question that led me to plant-based medicine and essential oils is I can't take antibiotics right now. What do I do? So it's the same question. If somebody doesn't have access to antibiotics, what do you do? And it's worth thinking through. It's worth thinking about. So it was kind of a fun project just to help people dive in a little bit and ask those questions and maybe get some answers also.
When you're looking at the options for the plant-based, what's the word I'm looking for? Medicine. Yeah. Sometimes people don't equate those plant-based and then medicine. Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot of different ways you can, or options you can choose, different approaches to getting that. Why did you choose essential oils over anything else?
I love herbalism and herbs, but essential oils are essentially a more user-friendly and expanded form of herbalism. Herbalism is really the oldest form of medicine, God designed and regional. If you study the plants of different regions, of course they vary, but you see that God has actually provided within each region what people need for their well-being. But learning how to use them and use them in a form that can be efficacious in a medicinal way. So I was looking into tinctures, and different kinds of teas and different poultices. And to be honest with you, that's a bit overwhelming for me. It also, along with my my Lyme disease, actually came a severe mold toxicity, which was devastating. I know some people, more and more people are having that experience. I'm not sure why that's increasing, but that has actually made it very difficult for me to explore herbalism as I'd like to, and to work with plants. And so the reactions that I might have, for example, with a tea or with an herbal tincture, I'm not going to have with essential oils. So there's a difference. Those proteins have been distilled out with, maintaining the basic chemistry. And so and the size of the bottles, just the very condensed nature of it. So really just technology meets herbalism is really how I think of it.
That's a great way to put it. That was always impressive for me as I've learned the science part of it too. Because people would say it's an either or. You're either trusting the science of pharmaceuticals or you're taking a gamble on plants, or whatever it is. And it's like, good luck with your tea. And versus, this isn't like a product placement. This is actually what I have every day in front of me. I have 3 things of essential oils, and everybody knows that anyway. It's because I'm battling my allergies that then triggers my asthma. I keep inflammation down and I detox. I use lemon, lavender, and peppermint. You can't fake it. It either works or it doesn't. And so when I started to realize the science of it and how it works at the cellular level, which really hardly it's I'm not saying it's impossible, but most things don't do it like that. This can go in and like we see it on the opposite spectrum of a virus. It can work in and trick a cell, get into a healthy cell, penetrate the cell membrane, and then next thing you know, it basically destroys it and replicates. Well, this does this in the way God intended to heal our body. And in the past, you can't really use those kinds of words because they're flagged, because now science owns these terms. Like, you can't talk about, it's so anyway, but it's the science of it is unbelievable. And that's where I think that marriage today is this is one area where you see that, where they can extract the purity of the aromatic compounds in such a way that, like, for example, one drop of peppermint oil is like the potency of 20 cups of peppermint tea or something like that.
Yes.
But anyway, it's one of those things, you can't make it up. And why in the world would you? It's like we want to take care of ourselves, and to not be healthy for us it impedes what we want to do.
Yeah, and it's also the most, we have more research on plants than we have on any of the pharmaceuticals currently on the market. It's just incredible. It's just that our attention has been diverted, and we've somehow been convinced that this is the lesser option.
And now people don't realize too that the pharmaceutical world, what it really does is it tries to create a synthetic version of what naturally occurs, in what God created in plants. They're just trying to replicate that. Why don't we harness what God has given us in these things, using science to be able to get the full extraction of that, that's the natural evolution that God meant, instead of, trying to recreate it. And then you have all these side effects that you have to deal with later. But it's interesting, when God's removed from civilization, then the new God is science to the max. The tree of life is cut off. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is right there. The tree of science, that's what science means, knowledge. And we've drunk that to the dregs of that, or eaten the tree down to its bitter roots. And we're reaping that today. And so this is not a small issue when it comes to how we are taking care of ourselves, because whether we like it or not, there is a war against our health right now. That is how the spirit of Antichrist exists in the world right now. It is the counterfeit kingdom. It's God wants freedom, devil wants control. Period. I mean, that doesn't take a PhD in theology or philosophy to figure out that. That's how it's going to work. So how does he do it? And so the Prepper's book, the essential oil, I'm just going to move it over here so I can read it. Essential oils for preppers. Oh, we've got a little one here. So we're sending our rescue squad of little children to escort her to her happy spot. The essential oils for preppers is critical. The more we share it with people in the beginning, if they're not at all familiar with it, it's you kind of have to break through a little bit of their preconceived notions. But once they either try it or they listen a little bit more, they're like, that totally makes sense. So how do I, where do I go from here? So the word, you talked about, you didn't focus too much on the prepper part, but I think that's actually important that we have, because like you said, we're witnessing supply chain breakdowns. This has nothing to do with anything theological, philosophical, prophetic, even though it's all been in those things. It's here. It's undeniable. As we speak, gas here in northern Idaho is like $5.15 a gallon. Who would have thought that 2 months ago, or 2 years ago, or 6 months ago, or maybe since the beginning of the year? I think it just went up from like $3 to that. And people are beginning to see the ramifications of dependency. What if we
Right.
can't get this? What if I can't afford this? And then it's, yeah, what if I lose my job and I lose my health benefits? Or this is the time to rediscover what freedom means. And it's not like a 1776 type of freedom. This is like literally the essential human freedom that's under assault. So you can't think for
Yes.
yourself. You can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of your kids. You don't have responsibility over them. I mean, it's like, you can't deny this. And if you do, it's to the detriment of everyone that you love.
Yeah, and it's not just about this idea of independence isn't just an ornery thing. It's about rising up and taking responsibility for those things in our lives with which we are entrusted. Our children, as parents, we understand this. We go to the grocery store, we don't miss that. We don't skip out on that because our children have to be fed. And so taking a preparedness mindset is just saying, well, this is my obligation and I see certain things happening and I'm not being crazy about it. I just want to know, if looking into the future, if something were to happen, how do I take care of my family? Just a very common sense approach to looking forward that I think the powers that be want to make look radical and a little kooky, but it's not.
You always want to demonize the solution so that everybody
Yeah.
goes back. But when you have an awakening to this, it's kind of, oh gosh, this was a long time. This is when I began to wake up in certain things. This is more like economics and other things. This is like 2008. And somebody challenged my thinking, some family member. And it had to do with the candidacy of Ron Paul. And I was just like, I don't really know who he is. I just like automatically like a robot. I'm like, he's unelectable. He's this. I'm like, I had never critically thought about it. And I said, well, what if he's right about this one thing? And it had to do with economics. And I started researching it, just some honest critical thinking and looking into it. And I began to realize, oh my gosh, he's right. And because that's true, that means that this is the path that this goes if we go this way and if we go that way. And I was like, oh my gosh. And our country is, economically speaking, right there. And so that woke me up to some of those things, key things there. And then it was like a rabbit hole. Well, what else is going on? And, I think that that's something that we all have a responsibility today, is to think critically and to think, even especially within the realm of our Catholic formation, which is under attack. There's so much confusion there. I mean, it's like no matter where you turn, it is the full assault of the final battle that Sister Lucia talked about, and John Paul II talked about, and Fulton Sheen talked about, and they didn't mince their words. What does the greatest historical confrontation mean? John Paul's words, 1976. Fulton Sheen, we're living in the days of the apocalypse, the last days of our era, 1940s. It's like,
Yeah.
they saw
And
something.
some people will be tempted to say, well, what do we need to focus on our health for then? Let's focus on the
Exactly.
spiritual. And the reality is that in order to be, look at the crisis of mental health that we have today. A lot of it, and I'm just going to be very blunt, a lot of it is manufactured and a lot of it is avoidable. And a lot of it is perpetuated by the very industry which provides us with the solutions. If our bodies are ill, it is a physiological reality that our minds are going to be affected. If we have inflammation in the body, if we have toxicity in the body, we're going to have a much higher degree of mental illness. What happens when you have mental illness? Well, when you have anxiety, when you have depression, when you have you're not clear thinking, well, that impacts our spiritual life. Because depression, where does depression lead? It can sometimes lead to despair. And isn't that really dangerous spiritual place to be? And we've got to maintain clarity. So we try to be clear in body and we want to be clear in mind so that we can make good decisions for ourselves and for other people, so that we can maintain a clarity in our prayer life, in our relationship with other people and with God, so that we can preach the gospel, so that we can be articulate, so that we can read well, so that we can be ready physically if it's called for in our family. that we need to rise up and do some harder physical work if we have to change jobs or whatever is called for. Can we do it? And I think that's what we have to, in this moment, say, I need to be prepared for that, not later when it comes, when the crisis comes and I find myself completely physically, mentally, and spiritually disabled, unable to rise up to that call. Because we know that the end of life comes. We know this is not about, for us as Catholics, about living forever. That's not the goal here. The goal here with bodily health is so that we can be present and rise up to answer God's call and the gospel commission. And whatever that takes us, and ultimately we will die and rise into new life. That's the ultimate mission, right? So all of that feeds into that.
Yeah, and if people say, well, if it's not about trying to live forever, which is true, I mean, we were created to live forever, and if we live a life of grace and God, we pass the final test, then yeah, we will, and we'll be reunited with our bodies. But the whole sense though of our bodies, and if people object to that, it's like, well, if it's all about suffering, then don't you want to have a healthy body so you can suffer longer? They're like, I never really thought of that.
Good point. Good point.
I like to, that's kind of my New Jersey wit will come out of those things, but it's like, but it is interesting because the devil wants to just simply impede us from the work that we're meant to do. And we are temples of the Holy Spirit. It's one thing when you can't avoid it. Like you get the battle wounds, but be in the battle. And, and then don't, it's selfish to then say, well, others will fight that. Well, what if they didn't really want to do that either, So anyway, it's our bodies, it comes down to this war over that because of, Jesus, his redemptive mission was through his body, and he extends that mission to the church. And it's to the extent that we are in the world. And so it's sort of like, well, it's not sort of, it is. It's a responsibility to say, okay, Lord, any way you wish to use me. And like you said, too, just going back to the preparation point, you look at Scripture and all the major turning points in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament. I mean, there were always warnings that were given, whether it be, of course, Noah was one of the big ones in Genesis with the ark, and everybody laughed at him until the day the waters came. But then you also had Joseph of the Old Testament, and people might say, well, how am I supposed to deal with my own situation? It might seem impossible, or I can't make sense of it. Well, remember, he couldn't make sense at all of his situation until the crisis came, and he was right where God wanted him to be. And he was the one who saved and provided for not just all of Egypt, but God's own people, because his own family came. So when people say, well, I don't know what to do at this point, you need to surrender it all to God and be willing to do what he tells you. And don't expect an apparition or something like that. It may happen, but who does God surround you with? If you're watching and listening to this, there's a reason why you are. There's a reason why Melody has written these 2 works that are simple, they're accessible, and they do some of the heavy lifting and homework for us and say, well, where do I start? There's a great place to start. And, so God puts those things in front of us, and we have to then make those choices. And then others will, it's a ripple effect. People will say, where'd you get that? Well, here's how I did it. So anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that because nothing is by chance. And especially right now, I mean, the sifting is happening. We had to sift through, there's the sifting through the lies, the misinformation, the disinformation, but then there's also just the sifting that's taking place in the world. And it's a humbling thing because, even Jesus says that, God will shorten those days, lest even the elect be deceived. Well, that should humble us all. People say, oh, I'll never deny you, Lord, like Peter. Well, I know a lot of people who've caved on things that will have, unless there's an intervention, lasting effects on their bodies. That's not speculation. It's now just being discovered what, added to injections and jabs and they didn't know. So it's like, I pray for miracles at that point, and pray that God will enlighten people who do know and have that realm of, are there ways that you can detox from this? Can you extract certain things? God can do anything, but we're under assault, and this subject is not a light one, nor is it an easy one, but it's a conversation we need to have. Melody, as we get to wrap up here, a lot of things we talked about, a lot of things that you're passionate about. What right now is on your immediate radar that you feel God is like a message that you would want to leave with our audience?
I guess just that eternal message of hope. With all of the work that I do related to physical healing, as I said before, our ultimate goal is beyond the body, right? And every day, and my kids laugh at me for this. They're like, "You're so morbid." Like I'm always talking about death. But I think starting at the end first, starting with an acceptance of death, and death as beautiful, and death, like so many of the saints looked at death as a friend, as this holy thing. And as we approach, and once we reconcile with the inevitability and also the beauty of death, then everything before it becomes a little bit easier, because that fear that we have had pumped into us, of course, over the last 2 years especially, I mean, just intense. And what is that fear? The fear is that we're going to die, right? So if we can conquer that fear and surrender that fear, develop, grow in this union with Christ, get those all of those pieces into place, and really start to honor what God has given us and the gift, and grow in that gratitude, then I think all of those pieces will that fear will be will start to slough away, and we'll be able to approach each other with that openness, with that light, with what Christ is calling us to be for other. And so I would just want to leave people with that hope, and also with the hope of that beautiful holy death.
Indeed. And looking at things today, I don't know, was it George Orwell who said this? But anyway, it's maybe in one of his writings. But, truth in a world of universal deceit is a revolutionary act. And we should not be scorning those who are trying to, and with evidence, and have done, that they've labored for it to be able to expose it, to give the truth that sets us free. And it's a truth not just about God, it is the truth about man, and it is the truth about his creation. And those are the three things that Satan will do everything he can to distort the truth of. And then that truth also affects what we love, because you can't love what you don't know, or you love wrongly if you're misinformed. So those who are out there, like Melody Lyons, and what we're doing here at the Fulton Institute, other people I've had on, the watchmen that are out there, this is not, it's not a task that I'll speak for myself perhaps, but my experience talking to them, it's not a popular one that you don't win popularity in doing it. You are scorned for it, and and people who are on the front lines, not even in the religious world, but just in let's say the medical world, these people are being killed. I mean, they're kind of martyrs for that cause in and of itself, because, they know what they're revealing. But as you were talking, Melody, I just had the passage from Ezekiel 33 that stood out, and I just wanted to read a couple of verses from it. And it's about the importance of being a watchman in these times, and not counting the cost, and leaving that to God. Because a lot of people, when you look at the Old Testament prophets, hardly anybody really listened to them. At the end of the day, that's why Israel was such a mess. And the church is the new Israel, and many are not listening. And to the contrary, they're succumbing and buying in to lies and promoting them at high levels, which makes the deception and confusion even more. But for those of us who are really doing our best and rooting it in the truth and verifying that, it says, "So you, son of man, I have made a watchman for the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. If I say to the wicked, O wicked man, you shall surely die, and you do not speak to warn the wicked to turn from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. But if you warn the wicked to turn from his way, and he does not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but you will have saved your life. And I think that speaks to all of us who sense this responsibility, but we have a fear of repercussions, the fear of death, the fear of things that, natural, but at the same time it's weak. It's out of weakness, because with God we should not be afraid of anything, because what's the worst that can happen? Like St. Maximilian Kolbe says, they can torture us, and we use it for the sanctification of our soul and their own conversion, of our own, persecutors. And if they kill us, what do? They send us right to heaven. He says, in the end, we are invincible. And so I want to thank you, Melody, for all of your hard labor, and through the challenges and the pain that God has permitted to have in your path according to his own wisdom, and from which you help others to find that wisdom in their own life. Because this is what we need: people who are on the battlefield, who have the kind of the battle scars, and can have the takeaway wisdom, so that those who are at home and sort of on the sidelines can begin to realize that we're all in this together, or this Titanic sinks. I mean, the Titanic is sinking of the world. And we better jump into the ark, like Our Lady at Fatima says, for her Immaculate Heart. The refuge is in her Immaculate Heart. But many people don't really know that it's happening right around them. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I want to remind everybody here too, once again, to go to theessentialmother.com and to get both of her books. I mean, the one, the Essential Oils for Preppers, I mean, they're not long, which is my kind of book. It's very, like I said, it's radical practicality. And not only that, I encourage you to go there because, and you can tell us right now, ways to, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, is that something that they can do through your website? Because, what you do, you're not just writing and blogging, you're also, like I said, you're a business owner, you are an entrepreneur, you're a leader, and you are leading people. There are people who you work with, and you guide through the things that you're talking about. So how can they get in touch with you?
So you can just go to my website, which is theessentialmother.com, and there's a contact form. And I'll actually tell you, so the Prepper book is not up there right now, but if you contact me, just send me a message through the contact form. And if you just mention that you heard about it on this podcast or wherever, and I will just send it to you for free, just because I don't have it up there.
That's okay. Well, there you go.
I just want to bless some people with that. So
definitely get it. It's like I said, we need things with us, and I'd probably recommend, because it is on the shorter side too. You can print it out in case they ever do have some power problems. To have solutions that are presented that are reliable, I think are really important. And so check that out. And then the Sunshine Principle, how can they get that?
You can go to my website, and it's available on Amazon, or actually directly through my website if you don't want to purchase through Amazon.
I recommend right through her website. You probably get a lot more from it too. I know Amazon gives reviews and those kinds of things, but I'm all about supporting, my guests and as many people as I can directly, because we're all on the front lines, and we have to, hang together, or we hang separately. Go to theessentialmother.com and check out her blog post too. You can subscribe right on that page, so you can get them automatically. Yeah,
you can do that. I think I'm a little bit more active right now, actually, on Substack. If anybody's on Substack, I'm active on social media as well. So trying to find the best ways to reach people, and build community, which I think is just so essential.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's my wife's world. is the whole social thing. She's like, Peter, you got to use Instagram more. I'm like, I don't use Instagram for anything. She's like, you just got to use it. You just have to. I'm like, I still haven't. I'm on it. But yes, give us your handles so they know exactly where to find you on Instagram and whatever ones you're on, and including Substack.
Yeah, on Facebook, I'm just Melody Lyons. And on Instagram, I'm The Essential Mother. And I think you can also search Melody Lyons, but you'll probably come up with 1,000 of them. But that, those two will match. And then on Substack, I'm Melody Lyons. I think it's melodylyons.substack.com is the way that they do that. But you can also search for me. And my Substack is called The Wild Return. And that is just a radical turning toward the heart of Jesus Christ. That's what I'm going for. And so I think that's it. I did just join Twitter. Rejoin Twitter. It can be an ugly, ugly place. I stepped away for quite a while, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just try again.
We'll give Elon a chance to clean it up.
Well, that's right. So I am minimally on there as well as Melody Lyons.
Okay, well, we have all those, and I'll have all these on the screen for people as well as in the description of the show notes too, so they can just click right on them. Well, fantastic. Well, Melody, thanks for joining us and taking time out of your very busy schedule, your family, and gosh, with the list of everything else that's going on, it's a joy to have you on.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you.
Well, if you're open to it, I'm happy to have you on again. There's a lot of issues I think it would be good to keep commenting on, and well, you're in the battle in ways that I'm not. So that's where it's just great to have you on and contribute that way. So I know many people will want to hear.
Oh, I'm up for that. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this episode. Please make sure that you check out all the links and not just support the work that Melody's doing, but this is work that's going to be transformative for your own life and for your family. Don't take anything of these times lightly. We know very quickly that things can change. And at the end of the day, we want to be self-sufficient. We want the freedom that God has died to give us spiritually, but also he died so that we could have life and have it to the full. And he's equipped us to have that. And while we have access to these things, this is the time to do it. So Melody is a great leader. She's a great resource. So please check her work out, subscribe and follow what she does. Reach out to her too with questions that you have. She'd be more than happy to guide you through, especially the world of essential oils and how that has radically affected her life and her health. And remember to also keep in your prayers the Fulton Sheen Institute and all of our work here. You can go to the fultonsheen.institute and check out what we're doing, especially check out the event that I'm looking forward to now spread out to parishes. It's called War and Peace, Fulton Sheen, Fatima, and the Fate of the Family. That in and of itself, I think is going to have a huge impact. If you're looking to wake up your parish and your community, you've got to bring this to your parish. And you can basically check out everything else that we have just right there on the website, fultonsheen.institute. And I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of The Catholic Patriot. God bless you.
Right is right if nobody is right. Wrong is wrong if everybody is wrong. And believe me, in this error-infested world, what we really need is a church and an authority that is right not when the world is right, but one that is right when the world is wrong.
Thank you for joining us for our podcast. It's always an honor to be able to bring this powerful message that we have from so many of our guests at a critical time in history where Catholics are seeking answers. I now want to ask something of you. There is a very special event that I've created for parishes, and it's called War and Peace, Fulton Sheen, Fatima, and the Fate of the Family. This particular event is designed for the signs of our times, especially for Catholics who are saying, how do I wake up my community? I know people who are faithful and they're prayerful, but they really seem to have no idea, or they're in a state of denial of what's really going on. And if they only knew, they would be making very different decisions in their own life for the protection and safety of their family, as well as just taking on that responsibility to evangelize like never before. And so this event, War and Peace, Fulton Sheen, Fatima, and the Fate of the Family is, I think, the most important event that I've ever offered. It really helps Catholics to connect all the dots and what's going on in this critical moment of history, and more importantly, what we should be doing about it. What has heaven been asking us to do about it? What wisdom does Fulton Sheen bring to this picture, because he was a prophet for our times? So please go check this out. Go to fultonsheen.institute/war and peace, and you'll learn more about the event. And more importantly, schedule a time. Let's get on the phone or Zoom call together, and let's find a way to bring this to your parish. This may be the most important event you ever bring to your parish, especially in these times, and a great act of mercy for those who are seeking answers. And here's a way that you can bring it right in and not have to worry about doing it all yourself. And this is the great passion and mission of the Fulton Sheen Institute. So once again, go to fultonsheen.institute/war and peace. Go check it out, and please give me a call today. Please go to fultonsheen.institute and check out the latest offerings that we have for you. One of the things I really want to emphasize is that we have a weekday prayer group that meets at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and we pray the rosary every day. We have an international prayer family that meets faithfully every one of these days, and it's growing by the day. So please, respond to what Our Lady asked of us at Fatima. Pray the rosary every day for peace and an end to the war. Our families are depending on this, and it's been a great source of consolation and empowerment. And we've also had some pretty dramatic prayer responses for all those who are praying the rosary. So check it out, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And also, there's other ways that you can support the Fulton Sheen Institute simply by going to fultonsheen.institute and then going to the top, and you'll see support the FSI, and all of your contributions that are made there are tax deductible if you live in the United States. So just another reason to be generous and help us to expand our offerings for the many needs that we have today. So thank you, and God bless you. Never in history has the prayer of the Rosary been more needed to save our families, our countries, and defeat the evils of the world than now. The Fulton Sheen Institute worked closely with the Roma Rosary to develop the most unique, beautiful, and meaningful rosary that was inspired by Fulton Sheen's World Mission Rosary. This special handcrafted rosary continues Sheen's passion to support the mission of the Church to evangelize the entire world. Each decade of the rosary has a different color, which corresponds with a different continent. Yellow for Asia, red for the Americas, white for Europe, blue for the nations of Oceania, and green for Africa. Each Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary comes with a set of 4 pure essential oil blends that have been chosen for their therapeutic and theological significance. These blends correspond to the 4 mysteries of the Rosary. Simply choose the oil for the mystery of the day, drop a small drop in the palm of your hand, and massage the oil over the surface, being sure to catch the lava beads. You're good to go, and your prayer will linger longer with these beautiful aromatic notes. Every Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary you purchase supports our mission to fight the battle for the hearts and souls of the Christian family and lead our world back to God. So visit the Fulton Sheen Institute's store and pick up your beautiful Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary today. Get one for you, your family members, and your close friends, and don't forget your pastor. Thank you so much for your prayers and your support.